The stars burned red through the viewing screen of the royal flagship. King Taman stood with his four hands clasped behind his back, watching the battle unfold in the darkness of space. His silver skin reflected the glow of distant explosions, each one a ship dying, each one carrying souls he had sworn to protect. "Commander Hana's squadron is surrounded, my king," reported the tactical officer. The young Valrosian's voice trembled slightly. "The Vex swarm has split our forces. She's holding the center, but they're closing in." Taman's hearts clenched. His daughter was out there, leading the vanguard as she always did. Fearless, brilliant. Everything a father could hope for in a child, and everything a king could want in a military commander. She had inherited his strategic mind and her mother's unbreakable will. "Send reinforcements to her position," Taman ordered. His voice remained steady, though fear clawed at his chest. A king could not show weakness, not even when his daughter faced death. "We've tried, my king. The Vex are blocking every approach vector. They're targeting her specifically." Of course they were. The Vex were not mindless. They learned, adapted, evolved. They had studied Valrosian tactics for months, and they knew that Hana was the key to the Empire's defense. Remove her, and the entire military structure would falter. On the tactical display, Hana's ship blazed through the enemy lines. Her squadron of 30 fighters had been reduced to 12, then 8, then 5. The Vex bioships surrounded them like a closing fist, their organic hulls pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. These creatures were not machines or ships in the traditional sense. They were living weapons bred in hive worlds, programmed through genetic memory to consume and destroy. "Father," Hana's voice crackled through the communication channel. Static washed over her words, but Taman could still hear the determination in her tone. "The Vex are preparing to jump to the home system. I can see their capital ships charging their biological drives." "Pull back, Hana," Taman said quietly. "Regroup with the fleet. We'll find another way." "There is no other way." A pause. An explosion bloomed on the screen close to her position. "If they reach Valros Prime, millions will die. Our shields can't stop a swarm this size. You know that." Taman closed his eyes. She was right. The Vex had grown bolder with each attack, their numbers swelling as they consumed world after world. They had been a distant threat a year ago. Now they stood at the doorstep of the Valrosian Empire's heart. "What are you planning?" Taman asked, though he already knew. He knew his daughter. "Their jump engines are biological, vulnerable. If I can get close enough to the flagship, I can detonate my ship's reactor core. The explosion will trigger a chain reaction through their fleet. It'll buy you time to evacuate the civilians and strengthen the defenses." "No." The word came out harsher than Taman intended. Around the bridge, officers turned to look at him, then quickly looked away. "I forbid it. You're my king, but you're also my father. I'm sorry." Hana's voice softened. "Tell Mother I love her. Tell Doyen he's ready to lead. He just doesn't know it yet. And Father, I'm not afraid. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "Hana, wait!" Her ship broke formation. On the screen, her fighter accelerated toward the massive Vex capital ship, weaving through biofire and plasma bursts. The remaining ships in her squadron followed without hesitation, providing cover fire, sacrificing themselves so she could complete her mission. Taman watched, frozen. Every instinct screamed at him to order the fleet to cover her, to pull her back, to do anything other than stand here and watch his daughter die. But he was a king. He had sworn oaths. He had responsibilities to billions of lives. "My king, should we?" the tactical officer began. "No," Taman whispered. "Let her do what she must." Hana's ship closed the distance. 500 kilometers. 300. 100. The Vex capital ship noticed her approach too late. Its biological weapons swiveled, firing streams of acidic projectiles and energy bursts. Hana dodged most of them, but her shields flickered and died. Hull breaches appeared across her fighter. "Father, I won't let them reach our worlds. Tell Mother I—" The transmission cut to static. On the screen, a brilliant white light expanded from Hana's position. The explosion consumed her fighter, then spread outward in a wave of pure energy. It touched the Vex capital ship, and the bioorganic hull ignited. Fire raced across the massive vessel's surface. The ship convulsed, and then its own energy systems overloaded. The chain reaction Hana had predicted began. One Vex ship exploded, then another, then a dozen more. The swarm fleet tore itself apart in a cascade of destruction. Within minutes, the entire enemy force was scattered debris drifting through the void. Taman stood motionless. Around him, the bridge crew erupted in stunned cheers. They had won. The Vex were defeated. The home system was saved. But he had lost everything that mattered. 3 months passed like a long nightmare. The kingdom held a state funeral, though there was no body to bury. Hana's name was inscribed on the Wall of Heroes, joining thousands of other warriors who had given their lives for the Empire. Statues were commissioned, songs were written. The people mourned their fallen commander. Queen Mireille stopped speaking. She moved through the palace like a ghost, her golden eyes hollow and distant. Taman tried to reach her, tried to share his grief, but the chasm between them grew wider each day. They had lost a daughter. Nothing else mattered. Prince Doyen threw himself into military training. He took his sister's old position as fleet commander, but he was not Hana. He was capable, competent, but he lacked her genius for strategy. The officers respected him, but they did not follow him with the same devotion. And the Vex returned. They had been wounded, but not destroyed. New swarms emerged from the deep sectors, larger and more aggressive than before. Without Hana's tactical brilliance, the Valrosian forces began to lose ground. System after system fell. Refugee ships flooded toward the core worlds. Taman aged visibly under the weight of command. His silver skin grew dull. His movements became slower. He spent long nights in the war room, studying battle reports, searching for strategies that might turn the tide. But every plan felt hollow without Hana to refine it. To see the patterns he missed, the council began whispering about forbidden weapons, ancient devices from the old wars, weapons so terrible they had been sealed away and sworn to never be used again. Weapons that could sterilize entire sectors of space, killing everything, Vex, civilians, planets, all of it. Taman refused. There had to be another way. Hana would have found another way. On the 93rd day after the battle, Taman sat in the council chamber listening to evacuation proposals. His advisors argued about which systems to abandon, which populations to save, which worlds to sacrifice. The walls seemed to close in around him. Then the alarms screamed. Every console in the room flashed red. Guards rushed in, weapons drawn. The tactical officer's voice came through the speakers, high and panicked. "My king! Unidentified ship approaching. It's broadcasting Valrosian emergency codes." Taman stood slowly. "What codes?" "Protocol 77 Hana. It's..." "My king, those are Commander Hana's personal codes, the ones only she knew." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at Taman. "It's a trap," Advisor Kyung-ho said firmly. "The Vex must have captured her codes somehow. They're trying to infiltrate the capital." But Taman was already moving. He pushed past the guards and ran through the corridors, ignoring the protests of his security detail. Hope and terror warred in his chest. It was impossible. She was dead. He had watched her die. But what if... He reached the main hangar bay as the battered ship touched down. It was small, barely more than a scout vessel, its hull scarred and melted in places. The emergency codes kept broadcasting on a loop. The airlock hissed, pressure equalized. Every guard in the hangar raised their weapons toward the opening door, and Hana stepped out. She was thinner than Taman remembered. New scars crossed her silver skin. Her armor was patched with foreign materials, and she moved with a slight limp. But it was her. Alive. Real. Behind her, something else emerged from the ship. A creature Taman had never seen before. It stood on 2 legs, roughly Valrosian height but different in every other way. Pink-toned skin, dark hair, Primitive-looking armor made from scavenged parts. It carried strange weapons, metal tubes with chemical propellant chambers, ancient technology, a human, a species from the old myths. Guards surrounded the creature, weapons trained. The human raised its hands slowly but remained calm, unbothered by the threat of imminent death. Hana saw her father. Her face crumpled. "Father," she whispered. Taman crossed the distance in 3 strides and wrapped all 4 arms around his daughter. She was alive. Against all probability, against all logic, she was alive. The embrace lasted only moments before reality crashed back. Guards surrounded them, weapons still trained on the strange creature that had emerged from the ship with Hana. King Taman pulled back from his daughter, his joy tempered by 1,000 questions and the cold weight of responsibility. "Secure the hangar," he ordered. His voice carried the authority of a king, though his heart still raced with emotion. "I want a full security sweep of that ship. And someone explain to me what that is." The human stood perfectly still, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. It wore makeshift armor that looked like it had been assembled from a dozen different sources. Valrosian plating covered its chest, but the arms and legs were wrapped in some kind of tough fabric. 2 weapons hung at its sides, crude metal tubes that probably fired solid projectiles using chemical reactions. Ancient technology from before the age of energy weapons. "His name is Jinwoo," Hana said quickly. She stepped between the guards and the human, her body language protective. "He saved my life. Father, I know how this looks, but please listen to me." Advisor Kyungho pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with suspicion as he stared at the human. "My king, this creature should be taken to a containment cell immediately. We know nothing about it or where it came from. For all we know, this could be a Vex trick." The human spoke. "I understand your concern." Its voice was deep, and it spoke Valrosian with a thick, strange accent. The words came slowly, as if it was translating in its head. "I mean no harm to your people. I am here because Hana asked me to come, because your enemy will become my enemy soon." Taman studied the creature carefully. It met his gaze without flinching, which was unusual. Most species showed some deference when facing a Valrosian king. This human showed respect, but not fear. "Take them both to the throne room," Taman decided. "Under guard. I want answers, but I want them properly." The procession moved through the palace corridors. Servants and officials stopped to stare as Hana passed. Whispers followed them like a wave. She was supposed to be dead. They had mourned her. And now she walked among them like a ghost returned to life, accompanied by a creature from ancient myths. Queen Mireille was waiting in the throne room. When she saw Hana, she made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. She rushed down from her seat and wrapped her daughter in her arms, trembling. No words came, just the desperate embrace of a mother who thought she had lost everything. Prince Doyen stood to the side, his face caught between joy and shock. He approached slowly, as if afraid his sister might disappear if he moved too quickly. "Hana," he managed, "we thought—" The explosion. "I know what you thought," Hana said gently. "I'm sorry, I couldn't contact you. The communication systems were damaged, and we were too far out." General Yunji entered the throne room, her military bearing stiff and formal. She looked at Hana, then at the human, and her expression hardened. "Commander Hana, you will need to explain yourself. The circumstances of your survival are highly irregular, and bringing an unknown alien species to the capital without proper security clearance is a violation of protocol." "Protocol," Hana repeated quietly. "I was dying on a dead world in a sector we don't even patrol. Protocol didn't save me." "He did." She gestured to Jinwoo, who stood calmly despite being surrounded by armed guards. He had lowered his hands now, though he kept them visible and away from his weapons. Taman settled into his throne. Mireille sat beside him, refusing to release Hana's hand. "Tell me everything," the king said. "Start from the beginning." Hana took a breath. "The explosion should have killed me. My ship's reactor overload worked. It destroyed the Vex fleet. but I managed to eject in an escape pod at the last second. The blast damaged the pod's systems. I drifted for weeks. Life support was failing. I thought I would die slowly in the dark. She paused, her eyes distant with memory. The pod's emergency beacon was still working, barely. It pulled me toward the nearest system with a habitable world. A place in the desolation sector. Murmurs rippled through the room. The desolation sector was a vast region of space that had been scoured clean by ancient wars. No advanced civilizations existed there. It was considered a dead zone, useful only for hiding or dumping waste. I crashed on a planet called Earth, Hana continued. My pod broke apart on entry. I should have died on impact, but the planet had atmosphere, water, life. I dragged myself from the wreckage. My injuries were severe. Broken bones, internal bleeding, radiation poisoning from the damaged reactor. I had maybe hours left. She looked at Jinwoo. He found me. I don't even know what he was doing in that remote area. Hunting, he said later. He saw my pod crash. He came to investigate. Jinwoo spoke, his accent thick but understandable. I thought it was a meteor at first. Then I saw the metal, the fire. I found her in the wreckage, barely breathing. I've seen battlefield injuries before. I knew she wouldn't survive without help. You're a soldier, Taemin observed. I was. My country had a war. I fought. Then I came home. Tried to live a normal life. But you don't forget certain things. Jinwoo's expression was neutral, but something haunted moved behind his eyes. I carried her to my vehicle, took her to the nearest medical facility. Your biology is different from ours, but trauma is trauma. Broken things need to be set. Bleeding needs to be stopped, Hana continued. The human doctors saved my life using primitive methods. They couldn't understand my anatomy, but they worked through the night anyway. Jinwoo stayed the whole time, helping translate my few words, keeping me stable. When I woke up 3 days later, I was in a small building they call a hospital, surrounded by humans. Impossible, Kyungho interjected. Humans are legends, old stories from before the Empire was founded. They can't be real. They're real, Hana said firmly. And they're surviving in the desolation sector, in a region we thought was uninhabitable. They have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light travel. They use chemical propulsion and physical projectiles. But they're thriving. How? Asked General Yoonji. What could they possibly have that allows survival in such hostile territory? Jinwoo answered. Adaptability. Stubbornness. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars where we fought ourselves. We learned to make tools from stone, then metal, then complex machines. We learned to survive because we had no other choice. While I was recovering, Hana said, I learned about Earth, about humanity. They're fractured into hundreds of nations constantly competing, but they're also united by shared biology, shared history. They've been preparing for alien contact for decades through their fiction and theories. When I arrived, some were afraid, but many were curious. Then the Vex came, Jinwoo said quietly. Silence fell over the throne room. They tracked my emergency beacon, Hana explained. 3 Vex scout ships entered Earth's orbit. They deployed landing forces to capture me. The humans had no idea what they were facing. But Jinwoo, he understood immediately. I recognized a hostile invasion when I saw one, Jinwoo said. I contacted my former military commanders. We mobilized defense forces. The Vex came down in the middle of a populated area. They started killing civilians, consuming biomass. We fought back. With what? General Yoonji's skepticism was clear. You have no energy weapons. We have explosives, armor-piercing rounds, incendiary weapons. We studied the Vex biology from the first casualties, found weak points, hit them with concentrated fire, used guerrilla tactics, ambush, retreat, ambush again. We lost people, many people, but we drove them back. Hana's voice was proud. They destroyed 2 of the 3 Vex scout ships, captured the 3rd intact. Humanity's first starship, taken from an enemy that thought them primitive. We studied it, Jinwoo added. Learned how the biological drives work. Couldn't replicate them, but we could fly the ship. Hana was healed enough by then. She said the Vex would return in greater numbers. Earth would be discovered eventually. We had a choice, hide and hope, or take the fight to them. So you came here, Taemin said. The Vex are your enemy, Jinwoo replied. But they'll become ours. Better to fight them with allies than alone. Better to warn you that there's a whole species in the Desolation sector that you didn't know about. We can help each other. Kyung-ho stepped forward. My king, this story is convenient. Too convenient. We have no proof. For all we know, this human is a Vex infiltrator using biological mimicry. We should imprison both of them until we can verify everything. No, Mireille said suddenly. Every head turned to look at the queen. She had been silent until now, but her voice carried steel. My daughter came back from death. I won't see her imprisoned in her own home. But the security risk, Kyung-ho began. Is noted, Taemin interrupted. He studied Jinwoo for a long moment. You'll be assigned quarters in the guest wing, under guard. Not as a prisoner, but for your own protection. My people don't know what you are yet. Until we verify Hana's story and decide how to proceed, you'll remain here. Jinwoo bowed slightly. I understand. Thank you, King Taemin. That night, after Hana had reunited with her mother and brother, after the immediate chaos had settled, Taemin walked through the empty corridors of the palace. He found himself outside Jinwoo's quarters. The guards straightened when they saw him, but he waved them to ease. He entered alone. Jinwoo sat by the window looking out at the alien cityscape below. The human turned when Taemin entered, but didn't rise. Why did you really come? Taemin asked quietly. The truth. Jinwoo was silent for a moment. I have a daughter. She's 6 years old. Her name is Yuna. When the Vex came, she was at school. I got her out before they reached her building. But if I had been 10 minutes later, he looked at Taemin. Hana said the Vex consume entire worlds. They'll find Earth eventually. I'd rather fight them here now, where we might have a chance, than wait for them to come to Yuna's doorstep when we're alone. Taemin understood. You're a father first. Aren't we all? Jinwoo replied. You let your daughter go into battle because you're a king. But you did it as a father too, believing she was doing what was right. I'm here for the same reason. Taemin nodded slowly. He looked out the window at his kingdom, vast and ancient, and now threatened by an enemy he didn't fully understand how to defeat. Maybe Hana was right. Maybe these humans, primitive as they seemed, had something the Empire needed. Maybe sometimes survival came from unexpected places. The debate in the War Council had been going for 3 hours. King Taemin sat at the head of the table, listening to his advisors argue about Jinwoo's fate and what to do about Earth. Some wanted to send ships immediately to establish formal contact. Others insisted the whole story was a deception, and that Jinwoo should be imprisoned or worse. We can't trust them, Kyung-ho insisted, his voice sharp. These humans have no place in our empire. They're primitives who got lucky against a small Vex scouting party. That doesn't make them allies. General Yoonji nodded agreement. Our forces are stretched thin, but we're holding the line. We don't need outsiders interfering with established military doctrine. What we need is more ships, more weapons, more soldiers from our own worlds. Prince Doyen spoke up, surprising everyone. We're not holding the line. We're losing. Slowly but steadily. Every engagement costs us more than we can afford. Maybe we need to consider different approaches. You're suggesting we learn warfare from primitives? Yoonji's tone was dismissive. I'm suggesting we're losing, Doyen said firmly. And maybe pride is a luxury we can't afford anymore. The argument continued, growing more heated. Taemin was about to call for a recess when the alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed across every surface. The table's holographic display erupted with tactical data. A young officer burst through the door, his face pale with fear. My king! Vex fleet detected entering the system. Massive numbers. They're heading straight for Valros Prime. The room erupted into chaos. Everyone started talking at once, shouting orders and questions. Taemin rose to his feet, and his presence alone brought silence. How many ships? He asked calmly. At least 300 capital ships, plus thousands of smaller attack craft. It's the largest force we've ever seen. They're not trying to raid this time. They're coming to conquer. General Yunji was already moving. I'll mobilize the defense fleet, all orbital platforms to combat readiness. Activate the planetary shields. It won't be enough, Doyen said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Look at the numbers. Look at their approach pattern. They've studied our defenses. This is a calculated assault designed to overwhelm everything we have. He was right. Taman saw it in the tactical display. The Vex had learned from their previous defeats. They were attacking from multiple vectors simultaneously, forcing the defense fleet to split its forces. And their new bioships were different, larger, with thicker armor plating, resistant to standard energy weapons. We fight anyway, Taman said. Evacuate the civilian sectors. Get as many people to the underground shelters as possible. All military personnel to their stations. This is what we've been preparing for. But even as he gave the orders, he knew the truth. They might slow the Vex down, but they couldn't stop them. Not with conventional tactics, not with the forces they had available. The palace shook as the first impacts hit the orbital shields. Taman rushed to the command center with his council. The massive screens showed the battle unfolding in real time. The Valrosian defense fleet fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The orbital platforms fired continuously, their energy weapons carving through Vex bioships. But for every enemy destroyed, 2 more took its place. They're breaking through Sector 7, an officer reported. Vex boarding pods are launching toward the surface. How many? Taman demanded. Hundreds. They're targeting population centers and strategic locations, including the palace. Taman looked at Doyen. Take command of the defense fleet. I'll coordinate ground forces from here. Doyen hesitated. Father, I can't do what Hana did. I'm not her. I know, Taman said gently. That's why you'll succeed. Don't try to be your sister. Be yourself. Trust your instincts. Doyen nodded and left for the flagship. Taman turned to his guards. Seal the palace, prepare for ground assault. Where's Hana? With the human, my king, in the guest wing. Of course she was. Taman opened a communication channel. Hana, the Vex are here. Get to the shelters with your mother. Her response was immediate. I'm coming to help fight. That's an order, Commander. Then I'm refusing it. The channel closed. The first Vex boarding pods slammed into the palace grounds 20 minutes later. The bioorganic shells cracked open, releasing swarms of Vex warriors. They were nightmarish creatures, insectoid bodies covered in chitinous armor, multiple limbs ending in razor-sharp claws, mandibles that dripped acidic venom. They moved with terrifying speed and coordination, a hive mind directing every action. The palace guards opened fire with plasma rifles. Energy bolts cut through the first wave of Vex, but they kept coming. They crawled over the bodies of their fallen, learning from each death, adapting their approach. Within minutes, they had breached the outer defenses and were inside the palace corridors. Taman monitored the situation from the command center, directing forces, coordinating evacuations, but the reports grew worse by the minute. The Vex were inside. They were killing civilians. They were heading toward the royal quarters where Queen Mirai had taken shelter. Send every available guard to protect the queen, Taman ordered. My king, that will leave the command center vulnerable. I don't care. Protect her. An explosion rocked the building. Smoke began filling the corridors. The Vex had breached the intersections. They would reach the command center soon. Then Taman heard something unexpected. Rapid-fire explosions that didn't sound like energy weapons, sharp cracks echoing through the halls, and shouting in that strange accent. Jinwoo appeared at the entrance to the command center, his primitive weapon raised. Behind him was Hana, carrying a plasma rifle. Both of them were covered in dark Vex blood. What are you doing here? Taman demanded. You were supposed to be in your quarters under guard. The guards are dead, Jinwoo said bluntly. The Vex broke through. We fought our way here. My king! More Vex approaching, an officer shouted, pointing at the corridor behind them. A swarm of Vex warriors rounded the corner, their claws scraping against the walls as they charged. The palace guards raised their weapons, but Jinwoo moved faster. He dropped to one knee, his weapon coming up in a smooth motion. The metal tube barked fire, ejecting small metal casings. The lead Vex warrior's head exploded. The one behind it fell with holes punched through its chest. Jinwoo fired in controlled bursts, each shot precise and devastating. The chemical propellant weapons were primitive, but at close range they were brutally effective. The solid projectiles punched through Vex armor that sometimes deflected energy weapons. But there were too many. For every Vex that fell, more appeared. They would be overwhelmed in seconds. "Fall back," Hana shouted. "Everyone into the command center. Seal the doors." The group retreated inside. The reinforced doors began to close, but a Vex warrior jammed itself in the gap. Its claws tore at the metal, forcing the doors apart. Jinwoo fired until his weapon clicked empty, then smoothly ejected the ammunition container and loaded a fresh one. The motion took less than 2 seconds. He continued firing while backing up. "Hana, the ceiling support on the left. Shoot it." Hana didn't question. She aimed her plasma rifle at the support beam Jinwoo indicated and fired. The beam melted through. The ceiling section collapsed, crushing the Vex in the doorway and sealing the entrance with rubble. Silence fell, broken only by heavy breathing. Jinwoo checked his weapon, his movements calm and practiced. Hana looked at him in wonder. "How did you know that would work?" she asked. "The architecture. I've been studying the palace layout since I arrived. Old habit. Always know your exits and your choke points." He looked at Taemin. "Your people fight in open formations, relying on superior firepower. The Vex adapted to that. They close distance fast, overwhelm you before you can bring weapons to bear. You need different tactics." "Such as?" General Yoonji demanded, her pride wounded. "Use the environment. Fight from cover. Create kill zones where you control the engagement. Make them come to you through narrow spaces where numbers don't matter. And most importantly, don't stand still. Move, shoot, move again. They learn from patterns. Don't give them patterns." Another explosion shook the building. The tactical display showed Vex forces breaching the inner palace. They were heading toward Queen Mireille's position. The guards there were fighting desperately, but they wouldn't hold much longer. "We have to get to my mother," Hana said. "The corridors are filled with Vex," an officer protested. "We'd never make it." Jinwoo studied the palace layout on the display. "There's a maintenance tunnel here, runs parallel to the main corridor. The Vex might not have found it yet. We use that, come up behind them." "How many soldiers do we have available?" Taemin asked. 30 guards in the command center. Maybe another 40 scattered throughout the palace if they're still alive." "Not enough," Yoonji said. Jinwoo looked at her. "Numbers don't win every fight, strategy does. Give me 20 of your best soldiers. I'll get them to the queen." "You'll get them killed?" Yoonji said flatly. "Maybe, or maybe I'll save your queen. Your choice." Taemin made the decision. "Go. Take whoever volunteers. Hana will go with you." "Father," Hana began, "your mother needs you. And I trust Jinwoo." Taemin met the human's gaze. "Bring my wife back safely." 20 guards volunteered immediately. Jinwoo studied them quickly, selected 15. "The rest stay here to defend the king. We travel light and fast. Follow my lead exactly. Don't fire unless I fire. Understood?" They moved out through the maintenance tunnels. The spaces were cramped and dark, filled with conduits and pipes. Jinwoo led from the front, his weapon ready, moving with a predator's silence. The Valrosian guards followed, trying to match his stealth. They emerged near the royal quarters. Through the walls, they could hear the sounds of battle. Plasma fire, Vex screeches and screams. Jinwoo held up a fist, signaling stop. He moved to the corner, peered around carefully. A squad of Vex warriors was trying to break through the reinforced doors to the queen's shelter. The guards outside were down to their last few soldiers, making a desperate stand. Jinwoo turned to Hana and the guards. "On my signal, we hit them from behind. Concentrated fire on the ones closest to your people. Create confusion. Then we push forward, establish a defensive line at those support pillars. Clear?" They nodded. Jinwoo counted down on his fingers. 3, 2, 1. They burst from cover, weapons firing. The Vex were caught completely off guard. Half their number fell in the first volley. The remaining warriors spun to face this new threat, and in that moment of confusion, the guards defending the door counterattacked. The Vex were trapped between two forces. Jinwoo kept his team moving, never staying in one place, using cover constantly. He directed fire with hand signals, coordinating the attack without needing to shout orders. The Valrosian guards adapted quickly, following his example. Within minutes, the last Vex warrior fell. The corridor was quiet except for labored breathing. Hana ran to the shelter doors and opened them. Queen Mireille stood inside, wounded but alive, surrounded by terrified civilians. When Mireille saw her daughter, she almost collapsed with relief. Hana caught her, holding her up. "We need to move," Jinwoo said. "More will come. We head back to the command center, take everyone we can." They moved through the palace in a fighting retreat, gathering survivors along the way. Every time the Vex found them, Jinwoo turned the corridors into killing grounds. He taught the guards his tactics in real time: ambush, fallback, ambush again. Use doorways, use corners, make every bullet count. By the time they reached the command center, they had saved over 200 people. And up in orbit, Prince Doyen was applying similar principles to the fleet battle, using asteroid fields for cover, drawing Vex ships into crossfire positions. Not fighting fair, but fighting smart. The tide was turning. The battle for Valros Prime lasted 3 days. When it finally ended, the palace was scarred, the orbital platforms were damaged, and over 10,000 soldiers had died. But the Vex were defeated. Their fleet retreated into deep space, leaving behind the wreckage of hundreds of bioships. King Taemin stood in the throne room, which now had a massive hole in the ceiling from a Vex attack. Sunlight streamed through, illuminating the gathered council. Everyone looked exhausted, but they were alive, and that was more than many had expected. "We need to discuss what happened," Taemin said. He looked at Jinwoo, who stood beside Hana. The human was wounded. Bandages covered his left arm and side of his head, but he remained standing. "You saved my wife. You saved hundreds of my people. The tactics you used turned an impossible situation into a victory." General Yoonji spoke up. Her earlier hostility was gone, replaced by something like respect. "The human fought well. His methods were unorthodox but effective. I underestimated him." "We all did," Kyung-ho admitted quietly. "Perhaps we were wrong about humanity." Taemin made a decision that would change everything. "I'm authorizing an expedition to Earth. Official contact between the Valrosian Empire and humanity. If one human soldier can make this much difference, imagine what we could accomplish together." "My king," an advisor protested. "The cost of mounting such an expedition during wartime is necessary," Taemin interrupted. "The Vex are growing stronger. We're barely holding them back. We need allies. We need new tactics. We need hope." He looked at Jinwoo. "Will your people agree to this?" Jinwoo was silent for a moment. "I can't speak for all of humanity. We're divided into many nations, many governments. Some will be afraid of aliens. Some will see opportunity. But I think if you come in peace, if you offer partnership instead of conquest, many will listen." "Then we leave in 3 days," Taemin declared. "Hana will lead the diplomatic mission. Jinwoo will be our guide. Prince Doyen will accompany them." "This is too important to leave to anyone else?" The journey to Earth took 2 weeks through the faster routes Hana had mapped. The diplomatic fleet consisted of 3 ships, 1 warship for protection, 1 transport for personnel, and 1 cargo vessel filled with technology samples and gifts. Taemin had chosen to stay behind to coordinate the defense, but he sent his son in his place. Prince Doyen spent much of the voyage talking with Jinwoo, learning about human culture and history. The more he learned, the more fascinated he became. "You've had over 500 wars in the last 1,000 years?" Doyen asked in disbelief. "Major ones," Jinwoo clarified. "If you count smaller conflicts, the number is much higher. Humans fight. It's what we do. We've fought over land, resources, religion, ideology, pride. Sometimes we barely remember why we started. But you survive. You keep building. We're stubborn. Every time we destroy ourselves, we rebuild. Every time we create weapons, we create art too. We're contradictory that way." Jinwoo smiled slightly. "My country was split in half by a war. Families divided. Brothers fighting brothers. It never truly ended, just paused. But we learned to live with it, to build despite it. Doyen was quiet for a moment. What will your people think when they see us? Some will be afraid. Some will be excited. Many won't believe it's real at first. We've imagined alien contact for centuries through our stories and films. But now it's actually happening. Jinwoo looked out the viewport at the stars. Everything changes after this. For humanity, there's no going back to thinking we're alone. When they finally emerged from faster-than-light travel near Earth, Doyen stared at the blue and green planet with wonder. It looked so peaceful from orbit, covered in swirling white clouds and vast oceans. But as they drew closer, he began to see the signs of civilization. Satellites, space stations, and dozens of weapons platforms that tracked their approach. "They're scanning us," the pilot reported. "Multiple radar locks. Missile batteries are activating." "Expected," Jinwoo said calmly. He moved to the communication station. "Let me talk to them. They'll recognize my voice." He transmitted on multiple frequencies, speaking in his native language. After a tense minute, responses came back. Cautious questions, demands for proof. Jinwoo provided identification codes and personal information that only he would know. Finally, clearance was granted. "You're authorized to land at the designated coordinates. Military escort will guide you down. Any deviation from the flight path will be considered hostile." They landed at a massive facility surrounded by armed soldiers and military vehicles. Hundreds of cameras pointed at the ships. The delegation that emerged to meet them consisted of representatives from a dozen different nations, all watching warily. A woman in a formal suit stepped forward. She was older, with gray hair and sharp eyes. When she spoke, her voice carried authority. "I am President Sora of the Republic of Korea. On behalf of the United Nations, I welcome you to Earth." She looked at Jinwoo. "Captain Jinwoo, when you disappeared 6 months ago, we feared the worst. Now you return with aliens. You have much to explain." Over the next week, negotiations took place in a secure facility. Hana and Doyen explained the situation, the Vex threat, the Valrosian Empire's struggle, the need for alliance. They showed images of the battles, the destroyed worlds, the relentless advance of the enemy. Human leaders debated endlessly. Some wanted to help. Others argued that Earth should remain neutral, that getting involved in an alien war would only bring destruction to their world. The arguments grew heated. Finally, President Sora called for a vote among the participating nations. The question was simple. Would humanity join the Valrosian Empire in fighting the Vex? The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would send soldiers to help. Not as servants or mercenaries, but as equal partners in a military alliance. "We have conditions," President Sora said firmly. "Human forces remain under human command. We share technology equally. Our people are not subjects of your empire, but allies. And if we do this, if we send our sons and daughters to fight your war, you share everything you know about the Vex. Every weakness, every strategy, every piece of intelligence." Doyen agreed immediately. "Done. We're not looking for servants. We need partners who can think differently than we do." The first human expeditionary force was assembled within a month. 20,000 volunteers from dozens of nations. Soldiers, engineers, scientists, doctors. They brought with them the weapons humanity had perfected over millennia of warfare. Chemical explosives, armor-piercing projectiles, biological weapons, psychological warfare tactics. Commander Bora led the human military contingent. She was a career soldier from Korea, experienced in asymmetric warfare and quick to adapt. Hana worked alongside her to integrate human and Valrosian forces. The cultural differences were enormous. Valrosian military doctrine emphasized rigid hierarchy and defensive strategies. Humans preferred flexible command structures and aggressive tactics. Valrosians trained for months to master standard procedures. Humans trained to think independently and improvise. "Your soldiers don't follow orders," a Valrosian officer complained to Bora. They follow the spirit of orders, Bora replied. We teach initiative. If a soldier sees a better way to accomplish the mission objective, we want them to take it. Your people wait for permission. Ours ask for forgiveness later. But gradually they learned from each other. Valrosian discipline combined with human creativity. Advanced alien technology merged with brutal human practicality. The joint forces began training for their first operation together. Prince Doyen observed the training exercises with fascination. He watched human soldiers use personal initiative in ways that would get a Valrosian court-martialed. He saw them fail, adapt, and try again with different approaches. They treated war like problem-solving. One evening, he found Jinwoo helping a mixed unit plan an assault exercise. Why do humans fight so creatively? Doyen asked. Your weapons are less advanced, your ships slower, your shields weaker, yet you win through innovation. Jinwoo considered the question. Because we've only ever had ourselves to fight. No alien technology to copy, no ancient empire to learn from. Every weapon, every tactic, we invented through necessity. We learned to be creative or die. He paused. Your people have relied on superior technology for so long, you've forgotten that the mind is the greatest weapon. Teach me, Doyen said simply. Teach me to think like a human soldier. The first joint operation was a strike against a Vex hive world. Intelligence indicated a medium-sized colony still in early development. The plan was to hit it hard before it could grow into a major threat. The combined fleet jumped into the system. Valrosian warships provided heavy firepower and shields. Human vessels, converted cargo ships fitted with weapons, served as fast attack craft. The coordination was imperfect, but effective. The orbital battle was fierce, but short. Then came the ground assault. Human drop pods slammed into the planet's surface alongside Valrosian troop transports. The Vex defenders swarmed out of their hive structures, and humanity showed the galaxy what it meant to fight dirty. They used chemical weapons that attacked Vex respiratory systems. They deployed biological agents engineered to disrupt hive communication. They set traps using Vex biology against them, pheromone lures that drew warriors into kill zones. They used flamethrowers because they learned Vex bioarmor was weak against sustained heat. The Valrosian forces watched in shock as humans systematically dismantled the hive. Not through superior firepower, but through ruthless efficiency and complete disregard for civilized warfare. Within 6 hours, the hive was destroyed. Not just defeated, utterly eliminated. The Vex didn't retreat. They were exterminated. Casualties were minimal. The mission was a complete success. News of the victory spread quickly through the Empire. Other species began asking questions. Who were these humans? Where had they come from? And why had the Valrosians kept them secret? But the success bred other problems. General Yunji, back on Valros Prime, began to resent the attention humans received. Advisor Kyung-ho saw an opportunity to advance his political position by playing on fears of outsiders. In the shadows, they began planning. If they could remove King Taemin and blame it on human influence, they could seize control of the empire. They could return to traditional values and Valrosian strength. The conspiracy grew in silence, waiting for the right moment. Meanwhile, on Earth, Jinwoo stood in his small apartment, holding his daughter Yuna. She asked him about the stars, about the aliens, about everything she'd seen on the news. "Daddy, are you going back up there?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he admitted. "But I'm fighting so you don't have to. So that by the time you're grown, the Vex will be gone, and you'll live in a galaxy where humans and aliens are friends." She hugged him tighter. "Promise you'll come back." "I promise to try my hardest," he said, because he wouldn't lie to her. Above them, in orbit, the combined human Valrosian fleet prepared for the next operation. The war was far from over. But for the first time in months, there was hope. Humanity had joined the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The success of the first joint operation led to 3 more victories over the following months. Human Valrosian forces struck at Vex colonies with precision and brutality. Each victory was broadcast across the Empire, showing that the tide of war was finally turning. King Taemin received reports of renewed hope among his people. Refugees stopped fleeing. Young Valrosians enlisted in record numbers, inspired by the stories of humans who fought without fear. But not everyone celebrated. In a private chamber deep within the palace, advisor Kyung-ho met with General Yoonji and 5 other high-ranking officials. They spoke in whispers, their conversations shielded by jamming devices. "The king has made us dependent on primitives," Kyung-ho said, his voice bitter. "Our soldiers look to humans for tactical advice. Our citizens celebrate alien victories while forgetting Valrosian sacrifice. This is not the empire our ancestors built." "Taemin is weak," Yoonji agreed. "He allowed his grief over Hana to cloud his judgment. Now we're bonded to a species that will demand more and more until they control everything." Another official, a member of the noble houses, spoke up. "The people love Taemin. We can't simply remove him." "Not openly," Kyung-ho smiled coldly. "But accidents happen during wartime, especially when humans are involved. We stage an incident, make it look like human soldiers attack the king. The people will turn against the alliance. We step in to restore order and traditional values." "And the princess?" someone asked. "Hana will oppose us." "Hana is with the human fleet, far from here. By the time she learns what happened, it will be too late. We'll have control of the military and the government." Kyung-ho looked around the table. "Are we agreed?" They were. The plan was set in motion carefully. Kyung-ho began spreading subtle propaganda through the media networks. Stories about human soldiers acting with arrogance. Reports of cultural conflicts between species. Nothing too obvious, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. At the same time, Yoonji positioned loyal military units around the capital. King Taemin, focused on coordinating the war effort, didn't notice the conspiracy growing around him. Queen Mireille sensed something was wrong, but couldn't identify the source. Prince Doyen was away with the fleet, learning human tactics alongside Jinwoo. The trap was sprung during a diplomatic ceremony. Taemin was hosting ambassadors from several allied species to celebrate the recent victories. Security was tight, but Yoonji had arranged for specific guards to be assigned that day, guards loyal to the conspiracy. In the middle of the ceremony, explosions rocked the hall. Armed figures in modified human armor burst through the doors, firing weapons. They moved with military precision, cutting down anyone who tried to stop them. Taemin's personal guards responded immediately, but the attackers seemed to know exactly where everyone would be. Taemin was struck by an energy bolt. He fell, wounded but alive. As guards dragged him to safety, he caught a glimpse of one attacker's face, a Valrosian wearing a helmet painted to look like human gear. "Traitors," he gasped. "It's a false flag." But his guards thought he was delirious from pain. They rushed him to the medical wing while the attackers vanished as quickly as they'd appeared, leaving behind weapons and equipment stamped with human military markings. Within hours, the news spread across the empire. Human soldiers had attacked King Taemin. The alliance was a lie. Humans were the real enemy, working with the Vex all along. The propaganda machines went into overdrive. Media outlets controlled by Kyung-ho broadcast endless coverage of the attack, showing the human weapons, interviewing witnesses who had been coached on what to say. Public opinion turned like a hurricane. Anti-human protests erupted in major cities. Valrosian soldiers began viewing their human counterparts with suspicion. General Yoonji declared a state of emergency. "Until King Taemin recovers, military command falls to me. For the safety of the empire, I'm ordering all human forces to surrender their weapons and submit to detention pending investigation." Human soldiers on Valrosian ships suddenly found themselves surrounded by hostile aliens. Some units complied, confused, and betrayed. Others refused and were arrested by force. Commander Bora barely escaped with a small group of soldiers, stealing a transport ship and fleeing into deep space. Kyung-ho appeared on broadcasts, his expression sad but determined. The king's judgment was clouded by his daughter's influence. Hana was captured and manipulated by humans. They used her to infiltrate our empire. This is a tragedy, but we must be strong. He announced that he was forming an emergency council to govern until Taemin recovered. But everyone understood the implication. Taemin would never truly recover his power. The news reached Hana while her ship was returning from a scouting mission. She watched the broadcasts in horror, seeing her father wounded, seeing human soldiers blamed, seeing the alliance she'd worked so hard to build crumbling. "It's a lie," she said to Jinwoo, who stood beside her. "My father would never be careless enough to let humans attack him. This is a coup. Someone is using us as scapegoats." "Who benefits?" Jinwoo asked simply. "Kyungho, Yoonji, the traditionalists who opposed the alliance from the beginning." Hana's hands clenched into fists. "They're trying to seize power." "Then we expose them," Jinwoo said. "How?" "We're out here with the fleet. They control the capital, the media, the military infrastructure. Even if we go back, they'll arrest us as collaborators." Prince Doyen entered the bridge, his face grim. "We just received orders from General Unji. All ships are to return to Valros Prime immediately. Human personnel are to be detained. Anyone who refuses will be considered traitors." "We can't go back," Hana said. "It's a trap." "I know." Doyen looked at his sister. "I'm with you. Whatever we're going to do, we do it together." Over the next week, loyalist forces rallied to Hana's position. Not all Valrosian soldiers believed the propaganda. Many had fought alongside humans, had seen their courage firsthand. They quietly broke away from Yunji's control and joined Hana's fleet. Commander Bora arrived with the human soldiers she'd rescued. Together, they formed a resistance. But they were outnumbered. Yunji controlled most of the military. Kyungho controlled the government. King Taemin was imprisoned in his own palace, officially recovering but actually held incommunicado. Queen Mireille was under house arrest. "We need to reach the people," Doyen said. "If we can broadcast the truth, show them evidence of the conspiracy, public opinion will turn." "They control all the major communication networks," Bora pointed out. "Any broadcast we make will be jammed or edited." Jinwoo studied the tactical displays. "We don't need major networks. We need local ones, small stations, community channels, places too numerous to control." "A grassroots information campaign," Hana said, understanding. "We spread the truth person by person, community by community." They began operating like insurgents in their own empire. Small teams infiltrated planets under Yoonji's control. They met with civilians in secret, showing them evidence of the conspiracy, communications logs proving the attack was staged, testimonies from soldiers who had seen Valrosian troops disguised as humans, financial records showing Kyungho's payments to mercenaries. The resistance used human tactics, guerrilla warfare, sabotage, winning hearts and minds. They struck at military supply lines, not to destroy, but to liberate. They hacked communication networks and broadcast brief messages before being shut down. They spread videos of Valrosian and human soldiers working together, showing the reality behind the propaganda. Slowly, the truth spread. Doubt crept into the official narrative. People began asking questions. If humans were the enemy, why were so many Valrosian soldiers defending them? Why was Princess Hana fighting against her own military? The turning point came when Prince Doyen made a decision that shocked everyone. He transmitted a challenge directly to Kyungho: ritual combat, an ancient Valrosian tradition. One-on-one battle to resolve disputes of honor. Kyungho couldn't refuse without admitting cowardice. The fight was broadcast across the empire. Millions watched as Doyen faced Kyungho in the traditional arena. It should have been an easy victory for the advisor. He was older, more experienced in ceremonial combat. But Doyen had been training with humans for months. He'd learned their aggressive tactics, their willingness to take risks, their refusal to follow predictable patterns. He fought with a style that bewildered Kyungho. He used feints, dirty tricks, improvisation. He turned the ritual combat into a street fight. Kyungho fell, defeated, and humiliated. As he lay in the dust, Doyen spoke loudly enough for all to hear. "Advisor Kyungho conspired to murder my father and seize control of the empire. He staged a false attack using our soldiers disguised as humans. He betrayed everything our kingdom stands for. I challenge anyone who supports him to face me the same way." Silence fell across the arena. General Yoonji could have stepped forward. But watching Doyen fight, seeing the determination in his eyes, she realized the prince had changed. He was no longer the uncertain young man trying to fill his sister's role. He had found his own strength. Yunji lowered her weapon. I yield. The conspiracy is exposed. I will face judgment for my role. The coup collapsed. Loyal forces swept through the capital, arresting the conspirators. King Taemin was freed from his confinement. He emerged weak but alive, embracing his son with pride. But there was no time to celebrate. Long-range sensors detected the largest Vex fleet ever assembled. Every hive in the sector had combined forces. They were coming to Valros Prime for a final assault. They had sensed the division in the Empire and were striking while it was weak. How many? Taemin asked from his medical bed. Over 1,000 capital ships, the officer reported quietly. Maybe 10,000 smaller craft. It's everything they have. If they win this battle, they win the war. Taemin struggled to his feet despite protests from doctors. He made his way to the command center, where his family waited. Hana, Doyen, Mirai, together again. We don't have the forces to stop them, Doyen said. Even with the fleet, even with human allies. We're outnumbered 3-1. Taemin stood before the communication console. For the first time in 10,000 years of Valrosian history, a king was about to do something unprecedented. He opened channels not just to military forces but to every civilian network, to every allied species, to Earth. His image appeared on screens across multiple worlds. I am King Taemin of the Valrosian Empire. I speak not as a ruler commanding subjects, but as a leader asking for help. The Vex are coming. If we fall, they will spread across the galaxy, consuming everything. We cannot stop them alone. I'm asking anyone who can fight to join us. Civilians, militia, merchant ships, anyone. This is not about empires or territories. This is about survival. The response was immediate. Civilian vessels began launching from Valros Prime. Merchant ships fitted with improvised weapons. Personal craft armed with whatever their owners could mount. They were a ragtag fleet, disorganized and desperate, but they came. From allied worlds, reinforcement fleets jumped into the system. Species that had avoided the war now committed forces. They had seen humans and Valrosians working together. If those two species could set aside differences, perhaps there was hope for unity. And from Earth, 7 billion humans watched their representatives prepare for battle. The combined human-Valrosian fleet positioned itself at the front of the defensive formation. Jinwoo stood on the bridge of a human warship, watching the tactical displays. The Vex fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a plague, spreading across space. So many that they blocked out the stars. This is it, Commander Bora said quietly beside him. Everything we've fought for comes down to this. Then we make it count, Jinwoo replied. The battle began. It was chaos on a scale never before seen. Thousands of ships fighting in three-dimensional space. Energy weapons crisscrossing like a web of light. Vex bioships swarming like insects. The defensive fleet held its ground, using tactics borrowed from human doctrine. Fluid formations, unpredictable movements, concentrated fire. The fighting lasted hours. Ships on both sides died by the hundreds. The space around Valros Prime became a graveyard of debris. But the defenders held. Every time a section of the line weakened, reinforcements filled the gap. When conventional weapons failed, humans deployed chemical and biological weapons that attacked Vex organic systems. On the surface, Taemin coordinated the defense with his children at his side. Hana managed fleet movements. Doyen directed ground forces preparing for boarding actions. They worked together seamlessly, combining Valrosian experience with human innovation. The critical moment came when the Vex Queen ship, a massive biological construct that commanded the entire swarm, pushed through the defensive line. If it reached the planet, it could deploy millions of ground troops. We need to stop it, Hana said, but our capital ships can't get close enough. The smaller Vex ships are protecting it. Jinwoo had an idea. Send every fighter we have, human, Valrosian, civilian, everything. Swarm tactics. Overwhelm their point defense with sheer numbers. That's suicide, someone protested. It's war, Jinwoo said simply. And sometimes you have to take risks. The order went out. Thousands of small craft from dozens of species converged on the Queen ship. They came from every direction, too many to shoot down, too dispersed to stop. Losses were heavy, but they broke through. Human bombers armed with nuclear weapons got close enough to deploy their payloads. The primitive atomic devices were devastating at close range. The Queen ship's biological hull ruptured. Internal explosions rippled through its structure. When the Queen died, the entire Vex fleet faltered. The hive mind connection broke. Individual ships began operating independently, confused and disorganized. The defenders pressed their advantage, pushing back hard. Within an hour, the Vex were in full retreat. Victory, costly, bloody, but complete. In the aftermath, as rescue operations began and the casualties were counted, King Taman made another broadcast. Today, we proved something important. Alone, we would have fallen. The Valrosian Empire, for all its history and power, could not have survived. But together, humans, Valrosians, and all our allies, we accomplished the impossible. This is the future I want to build. Not an empire of one species ruling others, but a coalition of equals working together. He announced his abdication. Not out of weakness, but to create something new. A council of representatives from multiple species would govern, making decisions collectively. The age of emperors was ending. The age of cooperation was beginning. Hana became the first Valrosian ambassador to Earth, building bridges between species. Doyen took command of the combined military forces, leading with lessons learned from both cultures. Queen Mireille worked to reform Valrosian society, breaking down the old hierarchies. Jinwu returned to Earth, where Yuna ran to meet him at the spaceport. He lifted her up, holding her tight. "Did you win, Daddy?" she asked. "We survived," he said, "and we made friends. That's better than winning." Above them, Valrosian ships moved through Earth's sky. Not as conquerors or rulers, but as partners. Humans looked up at those ships with wonder and pride. They had proven themselves among the stars. They had shown that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or weapons, but the stubborn refusal to give up and the wisdom to work together. The Vex still existed in distant regions of space. They would return someday, but when they did, they would face not just one species or one empire, but an alliance. Multiple worlds, multiple cultures, united by shared experience and mutual respect. In the desolation sector, on a blue planet called Earth, humanity prepared for whatever came next. They had joined the galactic community not through conquest or advanced technology, but by proving that adaptability, courage, and cooperation were the most powerful weapons of all. King Taman, now simply Taman, stood in a garden with his family. He looked at his children, warriors who had learned that strength came in many forms. He thought about the human who had saved his daughter, and in doing so, saved an empire. "The galaxy is dangerous," Taman said to Doyen, "but I think we're going to be all right." Doyen smiled. "Because we have allies?" "Because we learned to be better," Taman replied. "That's what humanity taught us. Not how to fight, how to grow." And across the stars, on countless worlds, that lesson spread. The age of isolation was over. The age of unity had begun.